Good afternoon. I'm Khatmah Alanazi. I'm from Taif University in Saudi Arabia. I'm going to present this paper with my colleague Dr. Cassi from Macquarie University, which will be on multimodality in AMI medical classroom. Okay, I'm going to start the presentation with what motivates us to do this study, and then we'll move to the introduction and background. Then I'm going to explain how the data was collected and analyzed. This will be followed by presenting the findings and discussion, and then we will conclude our presentation with some suggestions. We will end our presentation with answering your questions and listening to your comments and feedback. Okay, let's begin. For years, I have taught as an English teacher in the pathway programs for a medical school in Saudi Arabia, and I have two daughters who are currently studying medicine in Saudi Arabia. So this topic is very close to my heart. In Saudi Arabia, medical instructions or medical education is relatively young, with medical schools only being established 55 years ago. All medical instructions are delivered through English by way of necessity, and that's because, first, when medical instruction began, it was delivered by English-speaking international lecturers. Second, medical textbooks and research published predominantly in English. And third, even if we wanted to translate everything, many medical terms don't have an equivalent in Arabic. So this is why they use English as a medium of instruction for teaching medicine. But this, in fact, presents great challenges to the students in these programs, especially when you consider that most undergraduate students have a basic level of English proficiency, having studied all subjects or all disciplinary content in Arabic up to that point. Therefore, students generally enroll in one of these pathway programs that I worked in, and within the space of 1 to 2 years, they deemed proficient enough in the language of instruction, which is English, to then commence full-time studies in advanced scientific and medical content. This is what motivates the present study, which is part of a much larger investigation into the teaching and learning of medicine in Saudi Arabia that I conducted as part of my PhD here at Macquarie University and completed last year. The data that I'm reporting on today draws on pieces of my data that were beyond the scope of my thesis project, and so I'm revising it to better understand the different semiotic modes employed in these MI classes to support learning. In my study, I gathered data from 4 medical schools across 2 cities. All participants were females, given the cultural norms of men and women studying separately. In total, 373 students were surveyed, 60 students were interviewed, and 5 study groups were observed. Also, 40 teachers were surveyed, 27 teachers were interviewed, and 10 classes were observed. However, for the purpose of the data analyzed and presented here, we are focused on the data from the classroom observation and the interview of teachers who taught those classes. So the data and analysis I'm presenting today represent the early stages of this new direction of investigation. Multimodality analysis is new to me and is something that I didn't have a scope to work on during my PhD. But given how many times the use of realia, images, and videos were mentioned by the participant, it becomes clear that they are a leading accommodation strategy, and thus it's worth exploring their use in the classroom further, and this is what I'm doing today here. I would highly appreciate any feedback or ideas and suggestions as to my next step for analyzing this data so that I can best describe the way these varying semiotic modes are engaged in the Saudi AMI medical classroom. Now let's begin with the introduction and understand more about multimodality. Multimodality simply refers to the combination of different semiotic resources such as images, written or spoken text used to present the content. And it's found that using different modes supports students' science meaning making, allowing for connection between prior knowledge and the new scientific concepts, and encourages classroom participation. Across 2012 and 14 argued that language may not always be the dominant semiotic resource, and meaning is also constructed through other semiotic expressions such as videos, images, charts. The students don't just listen to what the teachers say in the classroom, they watch and read these semiotic resources too. SFR research have shown a growing interest in the multimodal resources that help to construct the content knowledge. Many studies have examined the effectiveness of using different modes in the teaching and learning of AMI content subject in various disciplines such as math and science. They found that these resources facilitate the teaching and learning of content that taught through an additional language, construct knowledge of science, and assist comprehension through making connection between visual and textual information. They also found that using gestures as a mode of meaning making enhances students' learning and maintains and regulates the student behavior in the classroom. In medical context, researchers have found the use of multimodality to be particularly useful. They found that the combination of semiotic modes such as graphs, images, YouTube, and charts facilitates student understanding and making meaning of complex concepts. Developed student communication skills like writing skills, written communication, enhanced student vocabulary knowledge, and made learning more accessible. They also found that using different modes or visual modes boosts students' confidence in understanding the content and enable them to communicate the content knowledge in their L1 confidently. Yet, little attention was given to how teachers use multimodality to facilitate the teaching and learning of content in medical context. Thus, this study aims to explore the use of multimodality in AMI medical classroom. It specifically focuses on how teachers perceive multimodality and how they use it when teaching medical subjects in 4 AMI medical schools in Saudi Arabia. We sought to answer the following research questions. What are teachers' perceptions of the use of multimodality in AMI medical classrooms, and how teachers use multimodality when teaching AMI medical content? To answer these questions, we specifically looked at the data from the 10 observed classes and the 10 interviews from those observed teachers. The observed classes represented 4 levels of instruction from 1 to 4. Each class was observed for about 40 minutes and it was audio recorded for transcription purposes. Copies of teaching materials were also collected from the teachers, like PowerPoint slides, pictures of models. I was not permitted to video record the lectures, and so my research field notes are further used to describe the actions in the classroom. For data analysis, a classroom observation was transcribed first and analyzed qualitatively using multimodality analysis framework. Data obtained from the interview was also transcribed and then analyzed thematically. Utterances produced in Students L1, which is Arabic, were translated into English and presented in the text. Overall, the analysis of this data reveals that the teaching occurs equally through the semiotic mode of language, like verbal and written mode, and visual modes, like using figures and images. The teachers conducted their lectures by using the text displayed on a PowerPoint slides presentation as basis for their explanation of the content, and supported them by visual modes such as figures, charts, images, and video links. Okay, let's see how the teacher used verbal modes when teaching the content. The findings shows that there is a consistent pattern in all teachers' teaching and explanation. Lectures were presented in 2 languages, Arabic and English. And as you can see from the table on your right, These lectures were primarily delivered through English, with 68% of the teachers' utterances spoken in English, and only 32% of their utterances were in Arabic. And the findings from the classroom observation and teachers' interviews shows that English is used to present information and mostly used for medical terminologies, and Arabic is used for explanation and clarification. The table you can see in this slide shows how the classroom discourse looked like and how the teachers are switching from one language to another in the same utterance. The analysis also showed that the classrooms were teacher-centered lectures, as you can see from the table on the left, with 98.5% of the classroom utterances spoken by the teachers as compared to 1.5% from the students. The table on the right shows how the students involved in the classroom discourse, and in fact, most of their discourse was a response to their teachers' questions using only 1 or 2 words in length. This shows lack interaction with the classrooms taking on a primary teacher-centered approach. Now we are going to see how the teachers use visual modes when teaching medicine. To support the learning of new information, teachers often combine the linguistics resources with other visual modes of meaning-making resources. These include static images, animated audio-visual realia, in-person realia, gestures, and handouts. And these handouts usually distributed to the students online to give them a chance to read, translate, and understand the topic before they come to the class. So let's have an example of statistic images. The classroom observation data reveal how teachers simplify their explanation, breaking down difficult concepts into more accessible language for the student to understand, and supporting this with images. For example, the following excerpts from one of the classes illustrate how the teacher explained the complex concept of a blood vessel structure, using an image of this structure. While she was doing this, she was pointing to the image using a laser pointing, specifically highlighting the circles around the red red dots of a plasma. Another example here are tables and diagrams. As you can see here, in addition to the verbal mood, the teachers use tables and diagrams to help students visualize the new information and understand the abstract concepts. In the first row here, she uses a table to show students a classification of a disease. And in the second one, she uses a diagram to help a student understand more about carbon metabolism concepts. The use of these resources was explained or clarified in the interview, where the teacher indicated that they use these resources to help a student understand topic better and comprehend the abstract concept easily. Teachers also use the human models to engage students and explicitly demonstrate knowledge of disciplinary. They use models of a human body to explain the part of the body system, for example, the skeleton system, as you can see here in this slide, or explain procedures and in the digestive system. In this slide, you can see how the teacher holds this model to show students the most important part of the system and how it helps the body in its movement and protects important organs. In the second picture, she also uses her body language, pointing to the chest to show students the part of the system which protects the heart. In addition to these, the teachers also used animated audio-visual realia, such as YouTube videos, to help a student understand the procedures of complex concepts. As you can see here, the teacher explained how vitamin B12 enters the stomach and observed verbally, and then she plays a video to help a student understand how this works visually. The reasons for using these resources were clearly clarified in the interview, where the teachers indicated that they use these resources to facilitate student understanding of medical knowledge, to help a student visualize information and understand abstract concepts and procedures. When they asked about human models or using human models when teaching, they indicated that the use of these models help them to describe and simplify abstract complex concepts. The teachers also indicated that gesture is an important strategy they use to help students understand the meaning of new words and concepts by pointing to the body parts or acting. Okay, this slide brings us to conclude the presentation. This study aimed to understand how teachers perceive the use of multimodality in EMI medical classrooms and how they apply it in their teaching of medical content. The findings reveal that the teachers supported the use of multimodality and encouraged their use to facilitate students' learning process, to support their understanding of medical content, and overcome the linguistics challenging of delivering this content in an additional language. The findings also show that the teachers used a range of modes in their teaching, including verbal, static images, concrete realia, gestures, and animated audio-visual realia. As you can see here, these examples. When using the verbal modes, teachers translanguaging between their students L1, which is Arabic, and English. And English was used to present information and mostly for technical terms. And Arabic was used for explanation and clarification. Based on these findings, we suggest the following. Multimodal resources are useful and should be promoted in the teaching and learning of medical subjects, particularly in countries where English is used as a foreign language to support student understanding and comprehension of the content. Teachers should be aware of the different modes and need to be encouraged to prepare multimodal presentation when teaching subject matter. Students also need to learn about multimodality to understand their role in facilitating the learning of medical content. Okay, this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for your listening. And now it opens for your questions, comments, or suggestions.